So I have everything laid out. I'm just going to go through what you'll need in order to make your cushion cover. So the first thing you're going to need is some fabric. I've got a 60cm strip of fabric by the width of the fabric, and this is an upholstery weight, so it's like a cotton duck, which came from Franklin's in Ipswich. Got these lovely little ladybirds on it. So to match, I have a 16-inch zipper. We're going to be making a 14-inch cushion cover today, so my zipper is a little bit bigger than the cushion cover that we're going to be making. It just makes life a bit easier. We've got some cording to make the piping, and we have some ready-made bias binding. Now you can obviously make your own bias binding if you want to, that's absolutely fine, but ready-made is just a bit easier. You can also get ready-made piping where the piping has already been wrapped around by some kind of binding of some variety or other and sewn together, which makes it a bit easier too, but you don't need to do that. It's obviously a bit more expensive than making it yourself, so I'm going to show you how you can make the piping yourself as well, and then you'll just need something to cut your pattern pieces out with. So if I move these out of the way, I will show you what we're going to be cutting. And if I open this up, I've already got my pieces drawn out, and I've drawn on them what they are. So this is the first piece, and it measures 14 inches by 14 inches, and that's going to be the front piece for my cushion cover. Then I have another piece here which is 14 inches down by 7.5 inches across, and that's going to be the top bit of my back piece for my cushion. And then this piece is 14 inches down by 10 inches across, and that's going to be the other piece for the back piece. It's got slightly more length than the other half because it's going to be folded over to cover the zip. So I've got 14 by 14, 14 by 7.5 and 14 by 10, and then we're going to cut those out and I'll show you how to start putting it together. So my pieces are cut out now, and I'm just going to show you. So if you were concerned about me writing on the pattern pieces, I've used a heat erasable pen. This is a friction pen, and you can see when you iron it, it just disappears. So I'm just going to give them a little press now to get rid of any of the marks that I drew on them when I was cutting it out, and just get them ready to sew together. I've got a few creases, so I'm going to press them out. You do want to have nice flat pattern pieces when you start putting your cushion together. And you can join me over at the cutting table in a second when we start assembling. So I've got my two back pieces here, the one that measured the 10 width and the one that measured the 7.5 width. And what I'm going to do is just flip them so they're right sides up. And then I'm going to take my zipper and I'm going to lay it with the right side. So the right side is the bit with the teeth up and the zipper head up, and I'm going to flip that over and lay it right sides down on my edge of my smaller piece like that, and I'm just going to pop a couple of clips to stop it from moving around. You can obviously use pins if you prefer, but I always stab myself, so clips for me. And then you're going to use your zipper foot on your sewing machine and you're going to sew just down the side there. I prefer to sew mine from this direction so that I can feel the teeth of the zip as I'm going, so I can run my zipper foot against the teeth of the zip here. So you can join me over at my sewing machine and I'll show you how we do that. So we're now over at my machine and I'm going to sew this on. So I've changed over to my zipper foot, and you can see I've got the right side of the fabric down against the right side of the zip, and then I'm going to just drop my foot there so the ski of the foot is up against the teeth of the zip. You can feel them through the fabric. I'm just going to bring my needle down first couple of stitches and then stitch along. Reverse, trim off, and there we go. So that's the zip attached to the first side of our back, and if you open it up, that's what it's going to look like. I'm now just going to top stitch down here as well. that's the first side of my zip attached and top stitched down, and then we can attach the other side as well. So I'm just going to go and grab that. So I've now got the other side of my back piece. So this is the longer 10-inch wide by 14-inch. So I'm attaching the 14-inch side, and I'm going to be attaching it right sides together with the zip. So I'm just going to be laying it over like that, and then pinning or clipping along here. Like so. So I come down to the other end, and I'll pop a clip there. And there. And there. So I've now got the other side attached on as well, and I'm going to stitch along there. So just to show you once more, that was the first side we did top stitched and then moved out of the way, and then this is just on the other side of the zipper tape. Okay, so we can open that out. Now with this one, I'm not going to top stitch, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it over enough to cover the zip, and then I'm going to press this, and then I'm going to stitch along here. So I folded over by about an inch going one way and an inch going the other. So this is why this piece was longer, because I was going to have to do the fold. Yeah, so you fold it over and then you press. So I'm just going to press that, and then I'll come back in a second when it's pressed and we will stitch along here. So we've given this a nice press, and then I'm going to start at the bottom where the zipper head isn't. And I'm just going to sew across. My machine's come unthreaded for some reason. There we go. Lovely. So for a plastic coil zip like this, you can just stitch straight across. If you're a bit nervous, a lot of people are, then there's nothing wrong with just hand cranking the machine over the teeth as well. That's fine. And then we're going to trim this off. Let me just find some scissors. Probably shouldn't have used my embroidery scissors, but there we go, that's what I had to hand. Then on the other side, where the head of the zipper is, before we stitch across here, we need to put the head of the zipper back inside so we can actually open our zipper up. So if you undo this, oh, doesn't want to come. There we go, like that. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to lay these pieces back together, and I'll probably pop a pin across here just to help stop it separating again as I stitch over it. But I'm not going to stitch where the actual zip where the actual pin is. So I'm going to reverse, and then I'm going to stitch right across. Take that pin out once I'm across the teeth, and then reverse. There we go. So that's now the top end in. My head of my zip is in there, so I'm actually going to be able to open the zipper. And then this is what the back of your cushion is going to look like. So you're going to have a hidden zip which opens all the way across and then closes back up. and is hidden by the fabric. So it gives a really good clean finish. So it looks quite complicated and it's super easy. So we're going to now go to the front side of the cushion and we're going to add the piping. So we'll show you now how to make your own piping. So this is a bias binding, store-bought bias binding. The great thing about bias, if you don't already know, is that it stretches. So it makes it easier to go around the corner of the cushion. You're going to open up your bias binding. You're going to lay your cord inside in the middle, and then you're going to fold the bias together like that, and then you're going to stitch along. Now you don't want to stitch really close to the cord at this point. You want to stitch a little bit further over, because when you stitch back round to add the top onto the bottom, that's when you try and stitch closer to the cord, and you don't want to see your initial stitching before you're outside of your last stitching. It'll make sense in a second. So what you're going to do is you're going to stitch down the length here, and I just tend to stitch just inside of the fold. So put that inside, try not to let it disappear. And you're just going to keep the cord inside as you stitch along. Open it out, cord inside, and then stitch along. And you're going to do that the whole way down. There we go. So that's the piping ready to go for you, like that. And then you're going to need your front cushion cover piece. So here's my front cushion cover piece, and here's my piping. I'm going to start about midway down one of the sides of my front cushion cover piece, and I'm going to start sewing a couple of inches in from the edge of my piping, so you don't want to sew right at the edge. So I'm going to start sewing about here, and I'm going to basically stitch back round just inside of the line that I sewed previously. So when I get down to the corner, we need to be able to turn this piping this way, which you can't do because you can see the outside line here is holding it, stopping it from moving. So I'm going to get my scissors and I'm just going to snip into the seam allowance here. And what that will do is open it out and allow me to turn that corner much more easily, like that. All right. So it can be a bit tricky sometimes getting around the corner. There we go. So that's now our first corner sewn there, and then we're going to keep going around. And then again, you're going to stop a couple of inches before you get to the corner, and you're going to snip into that seam allowance just a few times to get you around that corner nicely. A bit like that. And you can pivot around a little bit, a little tug to come around the last bit. There we go. Line it up again for the straight, and then sew down. Oh, I've still got my, I ran out of bobbin thread when I was doing the piping. I've still got threads everywhere, I'll get rid of them. And then, oh, went a little bit far on this one. I'm just going to lift my foot up so I can get in underneath there to trim quite close back to where the needle is. Foot back down, and you want to turn about there-ish. Maybe a bit more. And that's why there's no point really trying to pin this, because you have to kind of make it work as you go. Lovely. Then I'm going to stop when I've got still a little bit of wiggle room here, and reverse. I can find a reverse button and then trim off. Yeah. So I've got still a few inches here that are unsewn, and then if you join me over on my cutting table, I'll show you how we join these two bits together. Okay, so here's our front cushion cover, and we've sewed the piping on around the corners. And then just down here, what we need to do is overlap the piping so that we get a clean overlap, so it looks nice basically from the outside. So what I'm going to do is unpick about halfway here. So I've left this distance unsewn, and I'm going to unpick to about halfway between those 2 points. Just snip that pesky bit of thread off. There we go. And then you see you can get into here. Now what I want to do is to be able to sit this piece of piping inside this piece of piping. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit and reposition so you can see exactly what I'm doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the cord inside back to line of where my stitching is. So I'm going to fold this back, and I'm going to cut my cord off about there, and then I'm going to take this and I'm going to fold this back in on itself. Now if you've got a glue pen, they can be really handy at this point because you can glue it back. So if you just put a few blobs of glue on, now I've got sticky fingers, and I'm just going to fold that in on itself by about 1/2 inch or a centimetre, like that. And then I'm going to take my other edge of piping and I'm going to work out, so that's where the cord finishes on this side, so I need to chop this back to about the same length. So I'm going to start about there. Let's see if that should just about fit in there nicely. so they overlap, and then I'm going to stitch across here, and that will be how we finish off our binding. So when it's done, you really don't see a join at all. So back at my sewing machine, and here's the join where I overlap the two pipings together. So I'm just going to stitch back over that now. There we go, and now you can see from the right side, once the other side's in there, you're not going to see that at all. Lovely, so that's now the piping attached to the front. So now we just need to sew the back to the front, and then we're done. Yay! Lovely, so this again is my back piece with the zip in that we did at the beginning facing up. I'm then going to take my front piece with the piping on, and I'm going to face that down, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the edge where I overlap the two pieces of piping, and I'm going to put that at the bottom of my the bottom, if you want the flap facing towards where the piping is, like that. Now as it is, I overestimated here in terms of the size of this piece. I measured it 10 inches, probably only needed about 9, maybe 8.5, something like that. So I'm going to have a bit of extra, but what I'm going to do is I'm not going to chop that yet. I'm going to sew it together, and then I'm going to cut the excess off. So I'm going to clip or pin along here. There we go. So I'm going to sew that line first, then I'm going to sew down both sides. Then once I've done that, I'll sew across the bottom, and then I'll chop the excess off. I'll see you in a sec. Okay, so I'm going to start sewing the two cushions together now, the top and the bottom. I've got the top facing towards me, and I can see the stitching that I used to attach the piping in place. Now this time, with my zipper foot, I want to get as close to the cord inside the piping as I can. Yeah, so I'm going to use the side of my zipper foot, just like sewing next to a zip. I'm going to sew next to the cord, so it's going to get a little bit closer than it did last time. So I want to be about there. And you can see I'm feeling as I go to make sure that I'm getting nice and close in to that cord. As I go along, making sure I'm overlapping the edges properly. And then just going to pivot a little bit, and then a little bit more. Now you can go around these corners again once you've sewn it all together. If you find you're not as close as you wanted to be, or the corner's not as clean as you wanted it to be, you can go back, but you don't get a perfect 90-degree angle, you get more of a curve. Just again lining this up as I go. Now you can go a little bit slower as you go over the teeth of the zip if you want to. But with this Juki UX8, it barely noticed they were there, to be brutally honest with you. Now I'm just going to sew down and then stop. So I'm not going to do this bottom corner just yet, because what I want to do is start over at the other side here, and I want to come down the side first of all to make sure that it's all sitting nicely. Okay, so I'm back up at the top corner again. This is where I started my stitching as I sewed the two layers together. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to flip my presser foot over so that I'm on the other side. There we go. And then this way I can sew in next to this side of the cord when I sew down the other side. So just line the 2 layers up. Just go slowly and carefully around the corner. If you need to pivot a bit, you can. And as I say, when you finish this, if you find there are some bits where you think I could have got a bit closer there, I think I could have got a bit closer there, I'll go back round and I can always redo those. But again, I'm feeling here for the cord and trying to stitch nice and closely. The only thing I am going to do is just move the head of my zipper, which is just there, out of the way, because otherwise I was going to stitch quite close to that and it could cause problems. So again, slowly over the teeth of the zipper. Okay, machine didn't even notice they were there. And then line these bits up. It's just creeping over a bit. There we go. So if I come back out again, you can see we've sewn this side, and this side, and we've just got this side here which is open, and you can see it's just, there's a bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to lay it flat, and then I'm going to take a few pins and I'm just going to pin along this edge. Now you may find if you use a thicker fabric, or if you just choose to have a bigger fold, that you don't have as much excess, if any, at the end here. I only used kind of an inch fold over. I find if you fold over too much, it's difficult then to get the cushion pad in. So I'm now going to sew along this side here. So I'm going to have to switch my foot back over. Wow, my thread's going everywhere, bear with me. There we go. So I'm going to pick up back here at this corner. Just reverse a little bit to lock in, and then I'm going to be coming around the side of this piping, getting in nice and close to the cord where I can feel it as we sew. And then I'll just take those pins out as I come to them. Okay. And then I'm just going to come round the corner here to meet my other line of stitching. There we go. So that's it all completed. What you have to do to get into it, sorry I keep bashing my camera, is turn it round, and then you're going to have to get inside and kind of winkle the cushion cover open, and then you can check your corners to make sure that it all looks okay. So I could probably get a little bit closer again on that one. Oh, annoyingly, that one ended up having a seam in it where the bias binding had been put together. That's that one. These will sit a bit more cleanly when you chop off the corners as well. There we go. Oh, I can definitely get closer to that one. You can see the stitches there. So I'm going to redo. I might just go back round these corners again and just tidy them up, and I'll see you again in a second. Okay, so I've been back round the whole of the outside. It's an awful lot easier without a camera right in my line of vision. And it doesn't matter, like I say, this was my first go. And then as you go round, I got a little bit closer and I thought, you know, I can get even closer than that. And you can manoeuvre the cording so it fully sits over to the left and you can get really, really close. So it doesn't matter if you take a few times to get the perfect angle around the piping, because all this disappears inside the cushion, so you don't see any of this again. But then when you turn it through, if you've got really nice and close to the piping, then you get a really nice look. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if it takes a few goes, don't worry about that. And then all you have to do is trim off these edges. And for the life of me, I can't find my normal scissors, so I'm just going to use my pinking shears to just trim off that corner so that you can then turn it through. So trim all your corners and then you can turn your cushion cover through and you're all done. Okay, so that's your finished piped cushion cover. If you've got any stray straggly threads, you can chop them off. I went round the outside of mine and just used pinking shears because it was starting to fray a little bit, and I just thought it's going to help it. Even though there's going to be cushion inside, so it's not going to come apart, it just might stop it from fraying quite so much. And then I'm going to just turn it through and you can see what the finished result looks like. So I love that red pop of the piping with the ladybirds. Oh, it looks so cute. There we go. And then you're going to do that up. And that's your cushion cover complete. So you can give it a little press just to finish off. But there we go. That's your piped cushion cover. Oh, so cute. Bye. So there we go, that's your cushion cover done. We hope you enjoyed the lesson and we'll look forward to seeing you in the classroom again sometime soon. In the meantime, you can keep in contact with me on social media as the Suffolk Sewist. Bye.